Yeah, the Jews are copping it. Historically as well, they've been copping it as well.
Yeah, they've had some bad runs through history, the Jews.
They've had some bad runs. Ever since Jesus, it's been pretty bumpy.
Yeah.
This is what it basically said to me. We're in control today. You have no control.
Holy shit.
Where you thought you had control yesterday, you have none. There was no like, oh, this is going to be a fun ride. It's going to be cool when I wake up in the morning and I went through the death experience. It's like, no, accept your death. Accept it. Accept it. Let go. Let go.
One of the neat things about having my own podcast where I get to control the message, I get to control everything, is I can do what I want. And today I get to interview he's the host of one of my favorite podcasts, a guy named David Boyle. You guys are going to meet him in a second. This guy's an absolute beauty. We've been listening, me and my buddy's been listening to this podcast for a couple of years now. We stumbled onto it by mistake. It's absolutely hilarious. So I'm pumped to have you on. Let's go. We got a new episode of the Army of Great Men with comedian David Boyle. Let's go. David, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ab. Am I one of the Army of Great Men? I don't know
Officially,
about that.
You are officially a member of the Army of Great Men. Yeah, you bet. Thanks for coming on, man. This is awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. Where do we start?
I think we're on now. Let's do it. So, David, I want to maybe just talk about like I say, me and my buddies, we stumbled on your show, and I think it's not only is it hilarious, like it's a really, really funny show, but I love the purpose behind the show. I mean, so you quit drinking, what, a couple years ago?
It's coming up on 5 years in about
5 years,
4 days or something like that.
Amazing. And so when you quit drinking, you started a podcast, like a daily podcast. Most of them are, 7 to 15 minutes, and it's an episode every day.
Every single day for 5 years. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. 5 years ago, quit drinking. I'm a comedian, so I'm a stand-up comedian. So podcasting is like one of the things comics have to do. And I finally decided I'm done with the drinking, and I'm like, all right, I'm just going to almost keep myself accountable, but just plot the journey of quitting alcohol. And so the day I quit drinking, I started recording a 5-minute podcast every day, and then I got fucking trapped in it, and now I have to fucking do it every single day.
Well, I'm glad you do, because it's like, it is so good. And I love, like, for those of you who haven't heard it, it's called I'm Quitting Alcohol. You got to listen to this show. And I'm not kidding you. Like, there's hundreds of episodes. Just pick one. It doesn't matter. Just pick one. They're all great. I don't know how you keep coming up with most of the material is just old, really funny stories, right? Like, because you've had some pretty good times in your life, and telling those old stories are pretty funny. But it's amazing you haven't run out.
If you drink for 20 years, you accumulate a fair few stories. So
well, I think there's a lot of people who've drank for 20 years. I don't know any of them who have as many stories as you. Like, oh my God, it's so good. But it's great because, my podcast so far has been mostly pretty serious, right? Like, we've had, I've shared a bunch of my stories and just how to heal from things, and how to grow as men, and how to embrace masculinity. Had some topics where we brought on somebody who talked about like balancing your hormones, and we had an Army Ranger come on and talk about that experience. Like, we've just been really having some interesting people on.
You're in Alberta, aren't you?
I'm in Alberta, Canada. Yeah, home of
everyone's a fucking Oilers. Manly man out there, aren't they?
Oh yeah, we got a few. Yeah, there's a couple guys. Yeah, a couple manly ones. Yeah. But actually, what's funny, part of why I started this podcast is, last January, I was newly single, surprise divorced, and then in the summer I started to go on some dates, and the feedback from most of the women was like, it was shocking, like, because they just kept saying, like, there is just a severe lack of quality masculine men out there, and I think part of it is that society is just sort of villainized masculinity, right? Like they've just somehow made masculinity a bad word. If you're masculine, you must be toxic. And
Yeah, well,
and
it
sort
was
of
the
bugged
women
me.
who started that as well.
Well,
They
yeah,
wanted
I think
more
a lot of men
feminine
started it too.
dudes, and then in the back end, they're like, "Oh, we made a mistake. We actually want men."
Well, it is funny you say that because I think a lot of the things that have happened in society, like there was a push initially where they wanted women to sort of abandon their femininity, right? Like it was somehow wrong to be naturally feminine. And then when that happened, they started to, take on more roles that are maybe a little more masculine. And then the men started just like, honestly, they just started acting like wimps, like men everywhere. And then the women had to make up for the fact that all the men in their lives were giant wimps.
The
And
generation under me, like the
yeah,
generation
oh,
under me, I can't tell whether the dudes are gay, trans, fucking nerds. I don't know what's going on. I can't even tell the difference between the men and the women half the time. It's fucking chaos out there.
it is chaos. Yeah. And, I haven't talked a whole lot about politics on my show, but I'm definitely a right leaning person, but really, I just think I'm just more of a common sense person. And I look at what they're doing to kids. I mean, my kids are 15, 17, and 18. And the stories they tell me when they come home from school, like, it's just like absurd isn't even the word anymore. And I'm all for, like, I don't care if you're gay, straight, whatever, like, be who you want to be. I don't give a shit.
I think if you're
But
in the center now, you look like a fucking lunatic. You seem
oh
like a
yeah,
crazy right wing nutcase.
yeah. Yeah, like my mom used to say before she died, like she was a big left winger forever, and she used to say, "I didn't leave the left left me," like 'cause she just kept her values, but the left has just gone so
It's
far off the
chaos.
deep end, it's
Uh,
insane.
I've heard it's particularly bad in Canada as well.
Well, actually wanted to ask you about that because like we've gone like just cuckoo bananas here. Like it's insane in Canada. And the United States too. Like the divisiveness is crazy. What's it been like in Australia? Like, is it? I know you guys were pretty harsh in the lockdowns during COVID and stuff, but did things kind of get a little better after that?
Yeah, like it's strange because it's really only located in certain places really close to the city. I mean, if you go half an hour, 45 minutes outside of the cities in Australia, it's like 1990, 1980 again. Like, no one's thinking about this bullshit, and everyone's like sort of traditional value type thing. So it's sort of like clustered in the cities, or like the just out like 5 minutes from the city, 10 minutes from the city. And the problem is they're the loudest. So they're the ones who get the voice. So yeah, but I think
Yeah, that's how it is here too. The almost everything rural votes either conservative or Republican, and everybody in the cities, every city, I think every city in North America is Democrat or liberal here in Canada. Like just about everyone. Like Calgary is a big oil and gas town, and like you'd think that they would be like a right wing city, and they have like the most left wing mayor you've ever seen ever. And in our
how the
last
fuck
provincial
does that
election,
happen though?
they voted. It's weird, man. I don't know. I don't get it. I really don't. It's we could talk about it all day, but it's just like I really think that people are just so confused about their values and what's right and wrong. It's almost like the indoctrination has just taken hold so much that people don't even know which end is up. I mean, look at what's going on right now in Israel, right? Like, I get that the Israeli-Palestine conflict goes back generations. It's a super complicated thing. Whose land is it? You can go back and debate that all
I
day.
think that's what they say. They're like, it's super complicated because they don't want you fucking looking into it for 1 second.
Well, if you look at it with common sense, if like you look at it with common sense, if you are a left-leaning person who cares about women's rights and gay rights, supporting Hamas might be the dumbest thing that's ever, like, I can't imagine anybody with left-wing values supporting Hamas. Like, what are you doing? They think gay people should be thrown off buildings, and they think women are property. Like, what are you doing?
Not Hamas. Islam is against everything they stand for, more or less.
I think there's sections with Islam that are not, but the radicals and certainly those in Palestine, they are for sure. It's bizarre. Like, it's bizarre. Like, if you really think it's a good idea,
not into
go
the
fly
wholesale
there.
bombing of the Palestinians either.
What's that?
I'm also not a giant fan of the wholesale bombing of the Palestinians either. So
no, like, it'd be kind of cool if they just quit killing each other. And that's, like, taking sides is kind of silly. But like, if you're going to side with the people on either side, because the truth is the leaders on both sides are pieces of shit. Like, they are. They're not good humans at the top. But Israeli people, by and large, are generally pretty good people. Most Jewish people are pretty good people. The hate that Jews are getting now, it's like, it's bananas. Like, just open public hate. Like, it's wild. It's awful.
Yeah, the Jews are copping it. Historically as well, they've been copping it as well.
Yeah, they've had some bad runs through history, the Jews.
They've had some bad runs. Ever since Jesus, it's been pretty bumpy.
Yeah, it's true. I had a couple of bad moments. And I don't mean to laugh, but it's just like, fuck. Like if you took any other group of people in the world and just like demonstrated that, I publicly hate, these people, like, you'd be the biggest bigot in the world. But like, if it's with Jews, it's okay, I guess.
Yeah. Well, people have done that to Islamists and shit like that as well, Muslims, whatever.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know that we've seen a lot of that.
There's a lot of
in North
fucking
America
hate
recently,
out there.
It's a hateful place. Yeah. Let's talk about something else. I didn't bring you on here.
Yeah, let's
talk about something else.
That first 10 wasn't the funniest we've ever done.
Well, we don't have to make it all funny, but I actually I do want to do something funny. So because we're going to talk a little bit. My second episode of this show, I talked about some of the work that I've personally done with psychedelics, and I know on one of your most recent podcasts, you talked about some work that you've done in that area. Before we go on, just so everybody knows, if you are going to ever do any work with psychedelics, you use a trained professional. This is not an endorsement to do psychedelics on your own. You got to go get checked out. Before I did any work, I met with a psychologist and a psychiatrist to make sure that I had no issues that were going to, create any issues, because psychedelics used wrong can be a bad thing, but if done right, they can be really good. You had a really good experience. I want to talk to you about it today. I'm actually later this year, I'm booked to go down, and I'll be talking about it later, but I'm going down to Colombia for an 8-day ayahuasca. The guy hates when we call it a retreat because it's not a retreat. But I'm going down for 8 days to live with these Colombian locals and have.
How many sessions?
So 3. Yeah, 3 over 8 days. And we're living right in the jungle and sleeping in hammocks and the whole deal. It's
that's going to be
pretty epic.
That's going to be quite the experience. So before you started doing this hallucinogenic psychedelic work, when you were younger, did you take any?
Yeah, well, yeah. Like, so when I, like a couple, in university, and I did mushrooms a bunch of times and had fun, and then I accidentally did mushrooms like 4 years ago. How
did you accidentally do mushrooms?
Okay. Well, I got to tell this story now. So, and I was hoping to. Okay, David has this section of his show, and it's called Fucked Up Fridays. And Fucked Up Fridays is when people write a letter in about some bizarre story they've got, and then you read it on your podcast, and they're all like, a lot of them are really funny. So I think I have like a Fucked Up Friday worthy story, and this is how I accidentally did mushrooms like 4 years ago.
Mushroom ones are usually good.
Yeah, it was good. So again, I'm not endorsing doing drugs, boys and girls. So my brother and I and a bunch of our buddies, we were in Vancouver for this sports betting conference. And the guy who organized it is a guy named Andrew Pace. he had this limo. We were in Vancouver and he's going to take us like this. We were going to go to the casino, but he had this limo and he's going to drive us through like Stanley Park, which is this awesome park in Vancouver. And so we're all kind of hanging around at this party waiting for this limo bus to pick us all up. And then my brother, he's like waving at me from across the room and he's pointing at his phone. And so I look at my phone and it says, you got to come talk to this guy. I'm talking to the highest guy in Canada right now. You got to get over here. So he's talking to this guy and I go over and he introduces me and I went, wait a sec, I know you. And the guy goes, you know me? And I was like, yeah, you're an actor. You played Elliot on the movie E.T. And he goes, yeah, that's right.
Oh, no shit. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, I said, your name's Henry, right? And he's like, yeah, my name's Henry. So we shake hands and he is like, he's higher than a giraffe's ass. He's the highest guy in Canada. And then so my brother was like, how did you know that like, he was more amazed that I knew that it was the guy who played Elliot than the fact that it was Elliot. So then anyway, we start talking and like, he's having a day. And he's like, hey guys, I'm on hour 18 of a mushroom bender. I think you guys should do mushrooms with me. And I was like, I'm not doing mushrooms with you, Henry. Like, we got to go to this party. And anyway, he's just like, he's not taking no for an answer. And then he brings out this, like, he's wearing this jacket and he brings out this like huge industrial sized chocolate bar. It was like this big and it was like half eaten. And he's like, come on guys, just do one square, like one square. It's a gram. Like, it's not going to kill you. And we're like, all right, fine. So each take square this mushroom chocolate. We're eating it. It tastes terrible. My brother says, he's like, Henry, did you make this out of your own shit? Because it tastes like it was made of human shit. Like, this is the worst thing I've ever tasted. He's like, no, that's just how they taste. So we eat this mushroom and then we're like, hey, why don't you come with us to the casino? It'll be fun. And he's like, I can't go to the casino. He said, I'm the highest guy in Canada and I'm a celebrity. Like, I can't go in public right now. So we're like, okay, fine. So we get in the limo.
How much of the chocolate bar was missing?
Oh, like half. Like he had, I wish I could remember. He had a lot, like a lot.
So he was the highest guy in Canada.
He was the highest guy in Canada. Yeah. Like he was, but he was like surprisingly, in better control than I think most would be, having ingested that quantity of mushrooms. So then we get in the limo and there's music playing and nobody knows we've taken these mushrooms, like nobody except my brother and I. So then we're going and I look over at Ray and I'm like, hey, Ray, are your mushrooms working? And he goes, yep. He goes, you? I said, yep. So then we pull over because somebody had to get out and take a leak. So they had to go pee in the park. So we're in the middle of Stanley Park and we stayed in the limo. And then all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. Like everybody starts screaming and yelling bloody murder. And we're like, what the fuck? What is going on? And somebody pokes their head in the limo and they're like, holy shit, a coyote just bit Andrew's girlfriend in the leg and stole her purse.
Oh my God.
And so I looked at my
symbolic.
brother.
That's symbolic.
So I looked at my brother and I said, Ray, did that guy just say that a coyote bit Andrew's girlfriend in the leg and stole her purse? And he's like, I think so. So, okay. So we get out and sure enough, like her purse is gone and she's bleeding from the leg. And now we're waiting for an Uber because she's got to go to the hospital for like a shot of some kind. And so we're sitting around waiting. And then this guy starts talking to my brother and he's like, we should find that coyote. And my brother's like, yeah, we should find that coyote. So we form this search party with our flashlights on our phone and we go hunting for this coyote. My brother and I, now the mushrooms are starting to like kick in pretty good. And we find this coyote. And then this crazy guy from Philadelphia, he's like, if we scream at him, he's going to bark back and he'll drop, because he had the purse in his mouth. Oh, and so really? We all started screaming at this dog. And then it dropped the purse. And then we went and got it and gave Lacey her purse back. And then we went to the casino.
Jesus Christ. That is a good one. That's a good,
it's a pretty good
story.
One. And like so what mushrooms. What's that?
Only on mushrooms that would happen. Maybe acid as well.
Yeah, I haven't done that, but yeah.
That is wild. No, that's a good one. What happened the rest of the night?
We went to the casino and I won like $1,000 or something on a VLT, and then I don't know. It was just the rest of the night was pretty tame, but it was still like it was fun. But yeah, like that was the first time I had done mushrooms since, like I was in my early 20s, like working in the mountains at a golf course. And it never occurred to me that you could use these things for actual like growth and therapy. But
I always knew that. Even when I was abusing the fuck out of them when I was younger.
Really?
I knew. I'm like, I should really be doing some work here, but I was just doing it hedonistically. I was just taking as much as I could and throwing myself into the weirdest situations and then just trying to hang on, really.
So what made you think back then that they could help you grow? Because that thought never occurred to me until recently.
Just because you could go deeper inside yourself.
Yeah.
And you could start unpicking what the problems were. But back then I didn't really think I had that many problems. And even if I did, I was like not interested in fixing them. I was just completely blindly going towards the party, and that's all I gave a fuck about. But I knew I wasted a lot of opportunity when I was younger because I did tons of psychedelics. And after a while, because what happens with psychedelics is, especially when you're doing them like randomly without a purpose, is you have insights and profound ideas and thoughts and all that sort of stuff. And what you're meant to do is you're meant to give yourself time to process those insights and then like integrate them into your life and then live for a little while with the integration, and then maybe when something else arises, you can use the psychedelics to process something else. But when you're just doing them like crazy, you have the insights and then the insights sort of disappear, and then you're just after like a crazier and crazier experience, and then they start turning bad. But the bad trips end up being good trips because they crush your ego. And so
yeah, the ego is a really interesting part. Like how your ego is just completely removed.
Yeah. That's why you need a guide, because the way I did it, because I think psychedelics were a major, major part of the reason I ended up quitting alcohol. So like I would say maybe 80% of the whole thing.
And was it because you came to some realizations when you were like in the medicine that made you say, okay, I can't do this anymore? Like, was it as simple as that, or was there more to it?
What happened was when I was like 26, I was doing so much acid and just whatever was coming along, but I was drinking like crazy. And so drinking inflates your ego, like insanely inflates your ego. And the acid gives you like the introspection and crushes your ego. So having those two balance out. Anyway, I ended up having like this ego death experience on acid where like my whole personality just collapsed from under me and I was left with nothing. And then I knew I had a drinking problem then. This is when I was like 26. So, but I didn't understand anything about drinking. I didn't understand what alcoholism was or anything. I thought I could just take a month off and I'd be right again, like just recuperate a little bit. And so I took a month off. I came back, drank like a maniac, took some more, had some more bad trips, like insanely bad trips. And then a couple of other things happened. I was in the US and I took 2 cookies in San Francisco and fucking thought I was going to die for like 18 hours.
Oh no.
Like 2 weed cookies, and I don't smoke weed at all. I can't handle it. And so I promised myself I'd quit. So I ended up giving up drinking for a full year from like, I think it ended up being like 26 and a half to like 27 and a half or something like that. Yeah. And so that was the first step. And so that gave me some insight into what alcoholism was. And that was all triggered by the bad trips, the bad acid trips.
Sure.
So it wasn't planned. It was just chaos. But yeah, it forced me into a corner that I had to react to.
The introspective aspect to it is really fascinating, particularly when you're with a guide that you trust. You know, I did a couple of sessions with a woman here in Edmonton, and I'm not even going to say her name, but at some point, like when this all becomes legal here, she's going to come on and talk about it. Because it's still like it's not really illegal, but it's not legal either. So, and it's certainly not. Like to do it as a business, I don't think is quite okay here yet. But what she does,
when I was in Toronto in December, I went to a little outlet and they were selling DMT, they were selling mushrooms,
you can
they were
buy
selling
it
everything.
Yeah, you can buy it from stores, you can buy it online. Like that's not the issue. I like if I was going to do it, I wanted to get the most out of it, and the integration was the big part, and that was, you know, one of the big selling features. Her story is remarkable. She's a former nurse who then quit nursing to get her master's in psychology and sociology. Now what she does is she does this work, this psychedelic work. The two times I did it, it was a combination of psilocybin, so mushrooms, with MDMA, and when you combine the two, it just
I did that a few times as well, but not a lot of guidance and not a lot of integration.
The guidance is really neat because she can, so you lay in a bed with a sleep mask on and earbuds, and she controls your journey with the music. And
Unreal,
and you become your own therapist, and she just takes notes the whole time. So as you're coming up with all those like really profound, introspective, you know, with no ego involved, like you can really go inward, and you start to have all these realizations about yourself and your life. And then she writes them all down, and then over the week that follows, she helps you lock them all in with the integration. And she gives you the notes, you read them over and over, and you kind of lock them in. And it's neat because the mushrooms provide a great deal of like, you know, your brain is just so open. And the way I describe it, and I'm sure you'd agree with this, Dave, but it doesn't do the work for you, but it opens a door that you can't get in otherwise. And then you can choose to go in that door and do work that you could never do without it, or it would take years to do, you know, without it. And so like shit, the first time I did it with her, it was a 4.5 hour session, and I was so mentally exhausted when I was done. Like I needed help walking the car when I was done, like to my ride. Like I was like just absolutely spent. But life-changing, like really, truly life-changing.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
If you can have those experiences and then integrate, it is life-changing.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, but like you say, the integration is key. Otherwise, you just waste it because you forget it all.
It's nothing without the integration. You have to integrate. Otherwise, it's just you have like these fleeting moments of profound insight that you can't really grasp. And if they only last, like the profound insight only lasts a certain amount of time without integration. So you can have the profound insight and you're like, that's the most insightful thing I've ever thought of, ever experienced.
Yeah.
And you'll think that for about 3 weeks that you'll never, ever forget it. And then by week 6, you're back to your old fucking self. And
it's almost like when you wake up from like a really, really powerful dream and you're like, oh my God, like, and you think about the dream, and then by noon, you can't even remember what the dream was about.
Yeah. It's fleeting. That's for sure.
Yeah. So tell me about, cause I'm super curious cause I'm about I'm going to do this, in September. Tell me about your ayahuasca journey. Like, you talked about it on one of your episodes, and it was amazing. So I already kind of know this story, but I'd love for you to share it here. First off, where did you go for this? Like, was this somewhere in Australia?
No, this was in Cusco in Peru.
Oh, wow.
In the Sacred Valley.
Wow. Amazing.
But ayahuasca is not meant to be done in the valleys or anything. It's a jungle drug. So,
Right.
but this was like a retreat. The place I went to, absolutely fucking beautiful place. And I have a couple of young kids now, so I wasn't willing to take any risks. So I wanted a proper, like, almost basically like a rehab retreat type thing.
Sure.
I wanted pillows and couches and shit like that. Because I did it years ago. I did it when I was 23, I think the first time I did it, 22 or 23, in the same place in Cuzco, but I was on the
really?
back end of yeah, I did it when I was young. And that was like on the back end of like a 3 or 4 month cocaine alcohol binge through South America. And we didn't even know what it was. We were just like, what's this ayahuasca? We Googled. Google was barely even a thing back then. And we're like, DMT, yeah, that sounds all right. And then went and did it with some dodgy dude in Cuzco. And I had a insanely profound experience that when I look back, that was probably the point that led me to everything else, that led me to drinking. It took, how long after that? It took like 11 or 12 years after my first ayahuasca experience to quit alcohol. But I feel like, and I'm almost certain that from that first ayahuasca experience, there was a chain of events that led me to not only quitting alcohol, but back to the ayahuasca earlier this year. And
So
that
would you
was
say that was a pivotal turning point in your life?
the first time I did ayahuasca. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Wow. And so
It was one of the biggest.
What made it so profound? Because everybody has their own story. But what made it so impactful and profound for you? Like what happened? What did you learn?
In that particular one, so what happened was we went into the ceremony room, and like this particular one, when I did it when I was younger, it wasn't a it wasn't a retreat. It was just some dodgy dude with my shaman was just some guy who found a feather. Like that's about his shamanism degree. He's like, I found a feather. Let's give cunts some fucking ayahuasca. It didn't feel safe. Let's just put it that way. But I ended up taking it, and it didn't work at the start. And then I took another glass, and as soon as that glass hit, everything changed. And I ended up purging, because you vomit on this. There was a few people in my latest experience that weren't purging, but yeah, purging is
Part of the
you
deal.
want to purge. That's part of the whole thing. Yeah.
Right.
So I purged, like it was like a full fucking cleanse, because you're meant to fast. You're meant
Right.
to you're meant to cleanse your body beforehand
Yeah.
for the purge. And I promise you, like the day before, I was railing fucking cocaine in a toilet and
Jeepers.
just doing shots. Like we had no respect for the drug at all, or the
Right.
medicine at all.
Right.
And it ended up smashing me, because I purged like it felt like almost dying. I was getting that much out. And then once I had nothing left, absolutely nothing left, I felt this rumbling in my stomach. This was the final purge, and it was like smashing up through my chest, and I just went, my final purge was like it was the hardest one, and all these crystals came out, and I have no idea what the crystals were, but just like the
actual
Green
crystals,
Mile,
or you're just hallucinating and they look like crystals?
Well, it's hard to tell the difference when you're on the ayahuasca. It's hard to tell what's reality and what's not.
Right.
Because, like, yeah, you go into such places. But then after that, I cried for an hour and, like, just rivers of tears. Like I was drenched, like my t-shirt was drenched in just my own tears.
Wow.
And
were you
I
crying
woke
about
up.
something, or were you just crying just because you needed to cry?
Well, the thing that triggered it was I was at my mum's eulogy, doing her eulogy, and I've had a difficult relationship with my mum my whole life. She was an alcoholic and all this sort of shit. Also a degenerate gambler, lost our house. Crazy.
Shit. Wow.
Yeah. And
Wow.
so I was at her eulogy, and then I ended up doing the eulogy at every person I'd ever known and loved, like in flashes type thing. And I was just like bawling my eyes out. But that was all sweet. I woke up the next morning and it was like I'd lost 20 kilos of just mental weight that was just sitting around here. It was gone, completely gone. And I was like, all right, that was absolutely fucking incredible. And then that led to everything else. Yeah. But
Amazing.
my most recent one was something completely different.
Yeah.
It was
Can
like
you
crazy.
Can you share, because you had a and I love the way you talked about it on the pod episode where you talked about it. And it's funny. I think people who've never done any work with medicine like this, they might listen to that episode and the way you described it, and they probably wouldn't really get it. But anybody who's done any work with the medicine, like they would hear your words and be like, oh my God, like that might be one of the most profound realizations a human could ever have. Can you talk about it and like what you're trying to do, and then like, kind of the end result and your acceptance of it all? Cause I just think it's amazing.
Oh, wow. It's probably the whole story is probably going to take like 45 minutes. So I'd done a lot of DMT before. Like I'd smoked a lot of DMT. I reckon I'd done it somewhere between 50 and 80, maybe 100 times. I've smoked a lot of DMT. So those DMT pathways are pretty open in my mind. So in January, I went to Cuzco because I'd quit drinking, and I'm almost 5 years into it, and I sort of felt like I'd gone as far as I can go with like healing and progress, and just I felt like I'd hit a dead end. So I remembered the ayahuasca I did when I was younger, and I'm like, I think that's a thing. Before I start doing therapy, I've never done therapy, never went to AA, never did any of that sort of shit. I thought I'll do ayahuasca because I'd been meaning to go back for ages, but I thought I'd do it before I start any other work. I'll be like,
would it be accurate to say you were called back? Like you were called back to do it?
I was always going back. There was, it was just a timing thing. I'd never got the timing right, and I knew the next time I did it was going to be proper fucking intense, because I just knew the way I was going to approach it the next time, and I knew I was going to get fucked up. So like, yeah, it needed to be the perfect timing, and I needed to be by myself. I couldn't have my wife there or anything like that. So
yeah. And so what I mean by that, the called thing, for those of you who maybe be interested in this. So, like psychedelics are really interesting because when you're using them for work, you do a bunch of work, you integrate, and then there's this like settling in period. And then after a while, if there's still work to do or new work to do, you'll sort of get this call, like I got to go back and do that, or I need to do this, or I need to finish this work. And you kind of get like, you don't get addicted to the medicine, you get addicted to the work. Like if you're doing it, like I got to do more of this. It's coming, but you got to be ready for it. And so like when you say that, it just sounds like you always knew that there was more. You're called back, and then when you finally did it, like you were more than ready.
Yeah, I was definitely ready, and I thought it would point me in a direction. So I wasn't too sure what my blocks were. I wasn't too sure what was keeping me sort of where I was. And I was like, at least the minimum the ayahuasca will do is like, at least give me some guidance. It will point me in the direction I should be heading. So, so I went there, but I was like, I'm going to do this proper. So the first night I went to, I'll cut out all the shit. So like the first night we did the ceremony. So I was doing 2 ceremonies and they were back to back. So the first night I went to the psychologist. They said, how much should you take? Or like, have you done this before? I'm like, I've done a lot of DMT. I'm like, I can do a lot of this. Like I need a pretty decent dose. And they're like, all right, we'll give you a full glass. Everyone else in the room was getting half glasses. They're like, we'll give you a full glass and we'll see how that goes and we'll give you more as we go. So we did the prayers and all that sort of shit. And we took the glass, and it takes a while for the ayahuasca to kick in. It takes like
what's a while?
minutes.
Like more than an hour?
It can take an hour. Yeah, 45 minutes, an hour. And then you purge, and then usually everything kicks off after you purge. And that's where you get like the hallucinogenic type stuff. But there's a caveat there because every single person is different. Like no one in that room had, like there was, how many was there? There was like 5 other people in the room with me. And after every session or after both sessions, we compared notes and no one even got close to having the same experience. So that first night.
But did everybody get the experience that was right for them? Like that's the other beautiful part about it, right?
That's
you get
what
the
happened.
One that's right for you.
That's what happened. But the thing is, people go in with expectations on what they expect to happen. Like there was one guy there that it was his 6th or 7th session in about 12 days. And he was an Iraqi dude. And the first session he did, absolutely nothing happened. He didn't purge. He didn't do anything. He fucking absolutely nothing. No trip or no hallucinations or anything. Just absolutely nothing. And the shaman was like, "You're so fucking blocked. It's gonna take more than one session for you to even start getting the blockages." So he did another session, and then he had diarrhea after that session. And then the 3rd session, he started purging. And then the 4th session, he started getting some insights and shit like that. So it was a process for him to work through. And then the last session he did with me, he ended up on an IV drip. He was fucked.
Really?
He'd just done too much.
Jeepers.
He was fine. Like he was a little bit of a loose unit. He probably didn't need the IV, but yeah, he ended up doing it. So anyway, that first session, we took it. I sat there and the shaman comes around and does chants and all that sort of stuff to take you into the space. And when the shaman's coming around, and it's the most amazing chanting prayers type thing that you've ever heard. It's just beautiful and it resonates and it's great, but nothing's really happening to me. And the lady comes around, is like, "Are you feeling anything yet?" And I'm like, "No." And she's like, "Drink some water and you'll be able to purge." I'm like, I'm literally feeling nothing. And she's like, "All right, we'll get you another glass." And so she came over, gave me another glass, and I took that, waited another hour, nothing happened. She came over. I'm like, I need more. And she's like, just wait. Something should end up happening. I'm like, I know nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. And I waited another hour. This is like 3 hours into the session, and like I'm feeling nothing. I'm smoking the tobacco they give you.
Yeah.
And nothing's happening. And I'm like, all right, fuck, I need to do something about this. So I had a 2-liter or 3-liter bottle of water. I forget what it was, but it was a big, big bottle of water. And I'm just like, I need to get the ayahuasca out. So I'll just drink it until I start throwing up. I'll just force myself into this situation. So I just started drinking it, and like I drank like 2 liters of that water. It was a huge amount of water. And then it was all sitting in my stomach funny. So I started throwing up, and that sort of triggered a purge, and I kept on drinking. I just through sheer force of will, I got something out of this one. And I ended up purging heaps, not as much as the first time I did it when I was young, but I did a big purge, and then it clicked over, and I'm like, all right, I'm here. And I went into that DMT space, which I've been to a million times before, and I know what it is, and it was very pleasant. You see the aliens or whatever the fuck they are, the entities, and you're in conversation with them and all that sort of stuff. In DMT, you're in there for a very short period of time.
Yeah.
But the ayahuasca drags everything out. Like, it makes the experience longer. So I ended up being with the aliens or the so-called entities or whatever the fuck they are for like half an hour, and it was a beautiful experience. They're like, we're always here. We've always been here. Like, yeah. So that was great. Then I had some insightful stuff about, just the shit you do, how it's really just, you've got to take responsibility for all your actions. It doesn't matter if you've had fucking trauma back in the day, it doesn't matter. You're responsible for your actions, that type of thing.
Right.
Anyway, that finished, and I was like, all right, that's fine. But I've been there before. I've done that. That's fine.
Right. Nothing new. Yeah.
It was nothing new. It was nothing. It was nice, but it wasn't what I needed.
Sure.
And so the next day comes along, and I'm like, today's the day. And always the second session is stronger because the ayahuasca accumulates a little bit.
Okay.
And so I spoke to the shaman and the psychologist. I'm like, nothing happened. Because they saw me drinking the water because they're monitoring everything. And the shaman's like, yeah, all right, we'll give you double the dose this time. And I'm like, that's a good idea. And as soon as she said that, I got nervous. I'm like, all right.
No, you're going to get it.
This could be a big one here. This could be a real one. So I was nervous all day.
So, and like, with somebody who has the experience that you do in this, like, what exactly were you nervous about? Like, what were you afraid of, or what about this made you nervous?
I think I was actually nervous this could take me to like the edge of death. Like, I'd been thinking about it for so long that, I thought this is going to be a very, very extreme experience. I knew it beforehand. I knew it 6 months beforehand. I knew I was going to go through an extremely extreme experience.
Wow.
I just knew I was just going to force myself to go into an experience like that. And well, I did. So the next day rolls along, the next night, and we're doing the prayers and all that sort of shit. And maybe I'll tell that bit later. Oh, anyway, we're doing these love prayers, and the guide who's taking these prayers says, if you get an opportunity to go through the death process, just let go. Just let go, because that's the biggest gift you'll ever get. And I've never heard of anyone who hasn't accepted the death process ever get an opportunity to go through it again. You only get it once in your life, the death.
So, and what do you mean by the death process? So this is death without dying? Is that, like, how do you describe this? I don't know what this means.
It's dying. It's
dying.
You die.
But you actually die? Like, you don't actually die.
There's no difference. There's no difference between you dying in this and actual death. There's no,
except when you come out of it, like you're alive.
You don't know you're coming out of it. Like if you accept dying, if you go through the death process, you don't think you're coming out of it. You're dying and you have to accept your death. That's the process. It's a very difficult process to go through. Anyway, so I go.
I'm
we
nervous.
do the same thing. Pardon?
Now I'm nervous, like just hearing this. It's crazy.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, it's very. I'll tell you what happened in my experience, and you'll know that getting to the death process or death experience is it's a difficult thing. It's not just going to be sprung on you. So I go in, and man, the fucking shaman gives everyone a glass. Everyone's getting their shit in shot glasses, and she comes around with mine, and it's in a fucking mug. And I swear to God, it's meant to be 2 shots, but it looks like a lot. And I was looking at it when she was walking over. I'm like, that's a lot of ayahuasca. That's a lot. And I almost started sweating. I was like, that's a shitload of ayahuasca. And it tastes like absolute dog shit as well. So she comes over, gives me my mug, and I'm like, all right, fucking, this is what you came here for. Just fucking, you're about to face it. Just fucking do it. Let's do it. And so I drank the mug of ayahuasca, and it was a lot. I couldn't even finish it in one shot. I had to double shot it.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, all right, here we go. And you feel queasy at the start because it tastes like shit. So you're sitting there with all this ayahuasca in your stomach, and you're like, ugh, this is fucked. So I wait. We're all waiting. Nothing's happening. 45 minutes. Again, nothing's happening. Hour. Absolutely nothing's happening. No anything. Nothing's changed. Nothing. No hallucinogenic. Nothing. And I'm starting to think this is a little bit of a dud again. The psychologist walks over and is like, do you want some tobacco? And I'm like, all right, give me some tobacco. I'm like, I'm not feeling anything. Like, I'm starting to think I need more. Insanely. And so she comes back with tobacco, and it's like this pure tobacco. It's got no nicotine, nothing in it. It's you'll smoke it in your session because it's part of the ayahuasca thing. Sure. It's meant to bring spirits and whatever.
Sure.
So I start smoking this tobacco, and then the shaman starts chanting. And as soon as the shaman starts chanting, everything fucking changes. And I'm in this world, and it's intense. Like I'm like a minute into this, and I'm like, holy fuck, this is a lot. And I'm a 1 minute into it. And I had to put out my cigarette. I'm like, all right, I can't smoke that. And the shaman's chanting, and I'm like, all right, fucking, all right, I gotta lie down. This is a lot. This is a lot of fucking, this is a lot of energy going on here. And so I start lying down, and then I'm like, all right. And I'm talking like I'm fucking 2 minutes in now. This thing lasts 4-5 hours. So I'm barely holding on 2 minutes in. And at the start, they're like, if you get into real trouble, try and avoid it. But if you get into real trouble, we can give you some drugs, antipsychotic drugs that will take you out of the experience. And that's in the back of your head as well. You're like, if this gets too much to handle, then I'll take the antipsychotic drugs. Sure. And so like I'm 2 minutes in, and I've got like experience. with psychedelics and ayahuasca and DMT and mushrooms and fucking everything you can think of. And I'm 2 minutes in and I'm fucking barely hanging on. So, so I'm like, all right, I'll start drinking. I'll start drinking the water. I'll do the same as I did last session. And so I started drinking the water, like shitloads of it, like a liter and a half of water just down, because I was like, it was so much ayahuasca I took. I was like, I need to get it up. I need to purge it.
Sure.
It's just sitting in my gut, because I needed to lie down as well. I was so fucked already that I needed to lie down. And so I drank all this water and I'm like, and I'm trying to purge. And it's like the ayahuasca is like, not today.
We're not done with you yet.
You pulled that trick yesterday. It's not happening. This is what it basically said to me. We're in control today. You have no control. Where you thought you had control yesterday, you have none. And then I'm like, I'll just overpower them. So I drank more water and I tried to purge and nothing. Absolutely not even a drop came out. So now I'm sitting there with like 2 liters of water and all that ayahuasca just flopping around in my stomach, and it's uncomfortable as fuck. And I'm like, I need to get that out. I need to get it. I'm not going to be able to get through the next 4 hours with that swishing around in my stomach. So I start like panicking. This is like 4 minutes in, and that's just like what I'm thinking about here. The whole room is absolutely fractal shattered. Like you're in basically outer space. You're in an alien atmosphere and you're completely fucked. And like it's 4 minutes in and I'm like, all right, this is going to be intense. All right. Just try and settle down. Just settle down. This is what you came for. And I'm barely hanging on. Like honestly, barely hanging on 5 minutes in. And the night before, the shaman came around and did prayers in front of everyone. And she just started her first prayers in front of the person next to me. And so I knew how much time it had elapsed. It's like 6 minutes because she just started. And that whole process took like an hour and a half, maybe the night before. And she's 6 minutes in and she hasn't reached me. I'm next. And she just started the first person. So I lie down and I'm just hanging on for dear life. Like it's the most intense thing I've ever felt 10 minutes in. And then, I don't know, I just accepted it. And then you have to let go of things. Like, yeah, I had to let go of control there. So I had to let go. So once I let go of control, everything's sort of like fucking leveled out. And I managed to get used to that level. And I was like, all right.
So you just sort of get your footing, kind of? Like you sort of get your footing?
Yeah, I got my footing.
Okay.
I got my levels right, and I was like, all right, I'm fine. I'm fine here. This is good. And for about 2 minutes or 3 minutes, I was like happy. I'm like, all right, this is cool. This is good. And then as soon as I got like my equilibrium, the ayahuasca just went ring and turned up the gas like fucking exponentially, like and so it just all came like it was like the most intense. This is just the next level, and now it's a million times beyond anything I've ever felt or experienced in my entire life. The energy is just like almost tearing me apart. It's just like completely. I don't even know how I'm fucking dealing with it. The prayers are going on, and that's doing all sorts. I'm in a different space than I've ever been in before. You're completely detached from like your mind and body, and I was just hanging on. And this is at level 2. And so level 2 was insane. And I eventually did the same thing. I managed to get my equilibrium there. You just have to keep letting go of things. Letting go, all right, I've got no body, all right, let go of the body. Let go of the body, let go of the mind. Just let go, let go, let go, let go, let go, let go. And also you're like, all right, this is what I came for. This is what I came for. I need this experience. This is what I came for. Let go. Just let it do its thing, which is hard to do when you're fucking terrified, when you haven't been that scared probably ever. So finally get the equilibrium. The shaman eventually gets to me. So we're talking like half an hour in, something like that, 40 minutes in. And the shaman gets to me, and out of respect to the shaman, they said, you got to sit up and face them and accept their prayers. And by the time she got to me, I could barely sit up, but I managed to force myself to sit up. And she was there, but she was looking like she had turned into like I don't know what it was, some sort of alien type fucking thing. And she was sending her prayers and she was doing that. And it was like, it was the next level up. And I was like barely, like the whole time I'm just barely hanging on. And also in the back of my head, I'm like, all right, if this gets any worse, I'm just going to take the antipsychotics. It was in my mind the whole time. I'm like, I'm very close to just calling this and just taking the antipsychotics. And so she's doing the prayers. I get to the equilibrium there, and then she starts laughing because I think she could tell I had got used to that level as well. And then I started laughing, and then it just turned up again. And I was fucked again. And then as soon as she left, she moved to the next person to do the prayers. I had to collapse. And once I collapsed, it was the end for me. Like it was beyond my control at that point. Like there was nothing fucking left for me to do. I couldn't even if I wanted to at this stage, I couldn't take the antipsychotics. It was beyond anything, absolutely anything I could fucking do. And I went up a couple more levels and I was being torn apart. And I kept letting go of shit the whole way. Just let go, let go, let go, let go, let go, let go. And I just kept letting go of everything. Absolutely everything I could let go of. You got to let go of your memories. You got to let go of your family, friends, fucking just everything. And then I got to as far as you can go, and it was time to die. It was like death time. And my death angel, I could only call it, and I recognized the death angel. I'm like, oh my God, you're here to take. And when I recognized the death angel, I was like, oh my God, you're here to take me to my death. And once I knew I was dying, I was like really, really scared at the start. And then I was like, all right, all right, it's time to die. This is what I'm here. I'm here to die. And the energy and the procession up to the death was just, it was insane. And the death angel is trying to like keep me calm. And because I'm a comedian, I'm trying to crack jokes and they're trying to keep me focused and the Buddhas or whatever the fuck they are leading up to my death are all there. Like there were entities everywhere, and I'm sort of like, and I'm no longer a body or anything like that or mind. It's a completely different thing. It's unexplainable, and I'm going to my death, and I've given up everything. I've let everything I can let go. absolutely everything. I've let go of my kids, my future, my past, my memories, my body. Everything you can let go of, I let go of. And I was on the event horizon of death. I was on the face, and the energy was like insane. And all I needed to do was cross just that tiny little, I just needed to cross, and I would have died. And there's no difference. There was no difference between actual death and this death. Like you had to accept death. There was no like, oh, this is going to be a fun ride. It's going to be cool when I wake up in the morning and I went through the death experience. It's like, no, accept your death. Accept it. Accept it. Let go. Let go. And I got as close as you possibly can to dying, and I just couldn't make that last. I couldn't let go. That final let go into death, I couldn't make it. And like, I fucking tried as well. I really tried. I tried everything I possibly could just to cross that fucking event horizon, and I just couldn't. And I started coming back away from it. So I was right there, and then I came away when I couldn't do it. And then I got back, but not as close as I was before. And then I got pulled back, and then like I knew I couldn't do it. I knew when I didn't cross it at that moment, at that point, I was never going to do it, but I kept trying. But deep down, I knew I had failed the initiation. And I always thought that I was the type of dude that was going to be able to cross it when the time came. So it was a devastating blow to know that I'm not that guy, that you're not a god, that you're not like this being beyond.
So what do you think the message is there?
The message is that and I thought about it, and I knew as soon as I finished, I knew what it was. That final letting go, the final act of dying is not letting go. Letting go is an act of courage. Courage is letting go. So you can go only a certain level with courage and determination. That final act of dying is an act of love. The final act of crossing that precipice is love. Death is love. The final death is love.
How so?
It's the craziest realization I ever had. And if you're not practicing love in your life, you're not going to be able to cross that precipice when the time comes. So that's what the Buddhists are all teaching, is like love, love, love. So when the time comes, you can it's not letting go like this. It's a giving. It's a almost like a trust in love. It's a strange thing. So dying is love. It's a crazy thing.
Amazing.
That was the message.
So, and how did you, you talked about this on the episode that you shared, but how did you come to accept that you weren't that guy that could do that?
Yeah, that was a difficult one. I was like, well, I'd chosen to be a human being. I'd always thought, like, I had always like had these grandiose ideas that when the time came, I could do it. I would do it. There's no question. And when the time came, I was able to get as far as the face of it, and the final act I couldn't do. I couldn't do it because I wasn't practiced. I hadn't been practicing love in my life. I was just a normal person. Like, I accepted, I'm like, all right, yeah. I'm a normal person. I'm just a human, which is shocking for me to find out. So I'm just going to be the best human being as I can. I'm going to come back into this space, and I'm going to tell people about the death thing and how to die in the proper manner. I've got a message like, yeah, love is death. So if you want to die in the proper way, you have to practice love in your life. So I was like, all right, that's going to be a cool thing to tell people. But yeah, it was just really a humbling experience. And I was like, I will get another chance because I'm going to die in this life. So I will have another chance to cross that precipice again, or whatever the fuck it is. I don't know if precipice is the right word, but yeah, there's work to do. There's work to do now. So I need
so
to
with
be
that
practicing
clarity,
the love.
like, and that realization, how has your life changed since then? Like, how have you embraced love, and how are you a more loving person? Like, what's changed since you had that experience?
Well, it's not like a switch was flicked, but I definitely now, when I feel it viscerally when I'm doing anything wrong, and like when I'm doing shit that I shouldn't be doing, I know, and I'm like, it actually hurts now, and I I can stray off the path for a little bit, but it destroys me now. So I have to be on the path.
So it
It's just I have to be on the
your
path.
moral compass is just laser focused now.
I wouldn't say that, but
No, but like or maybe laser clear now.
I know where it should. I know exactly where it should be pointed.
Right.
I'm also still human, and I am very flawed. So
Sure.
it's not like I'm on the path either. It's like there's a lot of fucking shit that can throw you off the path, but I know exactly where it is, and it's on me just to walk it, pretty much. That's what it is. And if I can't, that's a massive failure on my point, but I've been shown the path, and if I can't walk it, then it's on me. And I'll have to work. I'll have to pay for that, I suppose.
Do you think your wife noticed a difference after you came back?
I think so. I think there's been a big enough change, yeah, in my demeanor and behavior and the way I like approach things. I think it's been pretty noticeable.
Yeah.
I mean, she listened to the episode as well where I tell exactly that same story as I told now.
Right.
I tell you what the biggest part has been, the biggest change is like all that trauma that you have, well, growing up and all that sort of stuff that you sort of indulge in as you grow older. You're like, oh, this happened. Like there's sort of like self-pity. I feel sorry for yourself, and even use that trauma to make an excuse as to why you acted in this way. When I go back to any of that like any of that self-pity trauma type stuff from back in the day, it's not there anymore. It's like I can't find it. It might come back eventually if I don't fucking start really walking the path, but right now and since the ayahuasca, I go back and it's just not there. It's not like there's no generator of self-pity or anger or like nihilism or anything. It's because I used to go back there and I'm like, all right, this, yeah, it's just not there. It got cleared right out.
Right. So it sounds like you.
Sounds
like you've removed the excuses for bad behavior, and it sounds like you're more accountable now.
That's pretty much. There's no excuses. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no excuses.
Fascinating. So when you were in that experience, like it sounds like there were more than a few times when it was, cranked up too much, and you're probably feeling like, oh shit, like I might have bitten off more than I could chew here, and maybe regretted like getting yourself in that state. when it was done, like, are you glad you did it?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I was like ecstatic. I was like I was like a reborn person the moments after and the next morning, because it was such, it was exactly, and ayahuasca does this almost almost every single time to every single person. It doesn't give you what you want, it gives you what you need.
Yeah, I've heard
And
that.
it's the exact experience that I needed. It was the humbling that I fucking needed. It was like, it was perfect. It was absolutely fucking perfect. It's just exactly what I fucking needed. And I spoke to the shamans afterwards because I was really distraught. Like, I was distraught because of what that lady said at the loving prayers thing, how she said you only get the death opportunity to go through the death experience once in your life. So I
Yeah,
needed to speak to the shaman. I was like, is this true? Is this true about the dying experience? Like, does it only happen once in your life? And she said it doesn't. She's like, but what you did, she's like, you tried to do something that, like, you need training and you need you need people guidance, and it takes like 10 years or something to do what you tried to do. She's like, I looked over at you. This is what the shaman said. She's like, I looked over at you and you were just a complete ball of light. She's like, you just took way too much. She's like, you did too much. That's what
right.
happened. She's like, you just did too much. And I'm like, I did exactly the right amount. I'm like, that's what I needed. I
It's
needed that.
amazing. This is such a like a roller coaster for me to listen to this because, of course, like I've I've got my trip booked. Like I'm booking my plane ticket here right away, and
Yeah.
like I feel like I'm actually being called to a test, like a test, like I'm ready to be tested, and I feel like the degree of difficulty of the work that I've done before, like I feel like it was right at that time, but I feel like I'm ready for something more difficult and like to go deeper and something more challenging. And I love being tested. Like you hate the test when you're taking it, but like after you're like, fuck yeah, like I passed, like I did it, I did it, I got tested. Um, and so like listening to your story, like there were a couple times when you're telling your story and I'm like, well, fuck, like I regret committing to this right now. And then hearing you at the end, it's like, no, okay, fuck, I'm doing this. Like I'm doing
Oh
this.
no,
Like, I'm
no,
going.
no, no. Well,
Yeah.
the first thing I would tell you is go in with no expectations.
Yeah.
Try as much as you can to have no expectations, because you're not going to get the experience I had, and you're not going to get the experience anyone else has ever had as well. You're going to get what you need. You'll get what you need.
Yeah.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
what it
And
is.
the
And
surrender is really key.
the letting go is one. It turns out the letting go part is like a fundamental of life.
Right.
You have to be able to let go. Let go. A lot of it, when I came back, because I'd always had like an interest in Buddhism, and so a lot of it lines up with Buddhism. And then I came back and I started listening to a lot of Buddhism lectures, and I've got a bunch of Buddhism books at my house. So I started reading them, and it almost exactly lines up with Buddhism, most of this stuff. Like even the description in the Tibetan Book of the Dead of what happens after you die was pretty much bang on with what happened to me as I was getting taken to the death thing.
Amazing.
It's crazy.
One of the things that I was told, like, this was like some of the earlier work that I was doing. And one of the people said, okay, well, you better get your question ready for God, because if you meet him during this, like you got to have a question ready. So like, what's your question for God? And so I thought about it for like quite a while. And then I finally came up with my answer. I'm curious, do you have a question for God, or have you got to ask him any time in the medicine? Like, have you ever got to stand face to face and ask the question?
No, I think I got my answer
Did
through
you?
the experience.
Yeah.
Like that was the answer to all my questions. Any like, what would that answer? That would answer like, what is the meaning of life? I suppose it's love. I reckon something along that, but not as specific. Like language, when you're talking these things, language really breaks down real easily, because when you're in these spaces and dealing with these like entities, they're unexplainable in language. So like no description will ever be suffice as
Right. Yeah, it's interesting.
as
Yeah, it's funny because that what you said is like, it's actually my question.
okay.
So
What's your question?
So my question, so I thought about
Because
it, right?
I'm pretty
like,
sure I can answer it for you.
My question would be, because at first I thought, well, God knows more than I do, and certainly God would know what I need to know more than I do. So rather than asking God the question that I think I want the answer to, I would rather say, God, what do you want me to know?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Right?
And they'll show
because
you.
it would be pretty arrogant to think that you know better than God about what you're supposed to learn.
Yeah.
And God might just, if you have a specific question, like God might just give you that answer, but maybe you miss out on something that's way more important and way more profound that you didn't even think to ask. So I would rather just, if I ever get the chance, I'm just going to say, what do you want me to know?
Well, when you take the ayahuasca, before you take it, you usually set an intention.
Right.
And show me was like a show me what I need to know is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because
and I'm excited for that.
If you ask for something, it's not generally what you actually need. It's what you think you want.
Yeah.
Getting shown is better.
And that's like over this last year, I had a friend who told me she was working on something called outcome independence. And she said it was the hardest thing she'd ever done. And I really had a hard time wrapping my head around it until I did. And I still, like, don't get me wrong, like I do not have this perfected by any means, but outcome independence is basically just surrendering the outcome, saying, okay, I'm not going to worry about the outcome. I'm just going to do the work. I'm going to do the work, knowing that if I do the right thing and I do the right thing, I'm going to end up in the right place. So rather than trying to steer my bus exactly here or exactly there or do whatever, because I think I've got the destination picked out that's the right one for me, forget about the destination. Do your work, and do it right. Do the right thing over and over and over and keep doing your work. You're going to end up somewhere that hadn't even occurred to you yet. And it's going to be way better than that place you thought you wanted to go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. The work is the goal, because if you're worried about outcome destroys you, because you have no control over the outcome. Right. You only have control over the work.
The outcome's the ultimate form of ego. Like having the arrogance and the ego to think that this is where I'm supposed to be. Well, if you surrender, you're going to end up in a place that's probably way better than anywhere you could have thought of.
And it's difficult because as much as we don't like to think it, there's so many outside forces pulling us in different directions. And then, you become desirous of a certain life, and then you compare yourself with others, and then you think you should be here when you should be there, and you're doing this instead of that. And it's very difficult to unravel yourself from just life. So you need to find a place where you can just that's why the meditation is always good as well, because you just get that quiet reset type thing.
I bet. Yeah. Man, this has been such a fascinating conversation. And, like thinking back to, me driving to the golf course, in the morning and listening to a couple of your episodes along the way and giggling and doing all this. Like I never thought, I'd be sitting here sitting here shooting the shit with you. And if I did, like talking about, just the most profound, beautiful messages, you can possibly talk about. This has been so fun.
It's been great. I've enjoyed it as well. Well, I'd love to come back on after you've done your session.
Yeah, man. Okay.
I'd like to hear about that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'm going in early September, so we'll let it sink in for a minute or two, and then maybe we can do it again in October.
Sounds good to me.
Awesome, man. David, before we go, where can people find your stuff? Tell me where they do it, and do you have any upcoming tours coming up anytime soon?
I don't have anything booked in, but my website's boylecomedy.com, and all my stuff is on that, the Patreon, the podcast, and all that. If you want to listen to my podcast on Spotify, it's I'm Quitting Alcohol. You can find it everywhere, Apple, Spotify, all that sort of shit. And then it's just Boyle Comedy, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that
like I
stuff.
say, I cannot recommend your podcast enough. I mean, it checks every box. Like it's so entertaining. It's so fun. And they're quick hitters. So you can crush 3 or 4 of them on the way to work, and it's great. David, thanks for your time. I couldn't be happier with this. It's such a great chat, and we'll talk to you later.
I had fun. I like talking about that shit. So
I do too. It's awesome. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day.
Adam, cheers.
Thanks, pal.